One of the problems with high-fat, low-carb ketogenic diets in general is that they include things like NutraSweet, which is a mitochondrial toxin. They're not organic, which means you get lots of glyphosate, which is a mitochondrial toxin. So these artificial sweeteners which mess up your gut and poison you. They include things like highly damaged fats. So, sure, corn oil, it's not a carb, I'll eat that. And pork rinds and crap like that. The type of fat really matters. And it's not like, it's saturated, it's not saturated. Look, saturated fat that's been burned is different than unburned saturated fat. And there's something like 10 different lengths of saturated fat, and they all do different things. So to say, it's a high fat or low fat diet is meaningless. It's like a high liquid or a low liquid diet. What the hell does that mean? Well, if the liquid is, cyanide, it's probably a bad move. Even a high fat, low carb doesn't mean anything until you know what the fat is and what the carb is.
Hello friends, it's Mike Munsell here. I'm with Dave Asprey. We're going to talk about his new book, Headstrong, and really talk kind of a core theme, Dave, that I want to get into. This idea that really to optimize our neurologic potential, right? To make more neurons. It's really congruent with kind of fat burning machinery, more mitochondrial biogenesis, more density there. And I kind of want to take the steps back a little bit. And I think a good bridge into becoming more fat adapted is Bulletproof Coffee. And I think without you introducing this fatty coffee, Bulletproof Coffee, to us, I don't think we would be as a culture where we are now in terms of like the popularity of ketosis and the idea that like going for longer periods of time without food is healthy and you actually feel better. You know what I mean? So I want to commend you for doing that.
Thank you.
But so for folks that don't know, like, let's get the backstory on the Bulletproof Coffee. When did you kind of go to Tibet, right?
In 2004, I went to Tibet, and I was at 18,000 feet elevation, 10 degrees below zero, and feeling like death, because that's kind of how you're supposed to feel in those conditions. And the little Tibetan lady gave me yak butter tea, and 5 minutes later, I felt my brain turn on. I'm like, this is weird, to the point that I came back to the States. And I bought some butter and I bought some tea and it tasted like crap and it didn't work. So then I'm like, it must be the butter because it's not yak butter. So I tested all these different butters. I'm like, grass-fed butter makes a difference. And it turns out it's because of butyric acid and CLA, which metabolize differently than the crap-fed butter. Mm-hmm. And then because I've run an anti-aging nonprofit research and education group for almost 20 years now, we've been talking about coconut oil and these other like subcategories like MCT, and then now it's actually turns out some of the MCTs are fake MCTs that are getting sold. And then now is brain octane. So I ended up adding those things and looking at whether there are mitochondrial toxins in the coffee, and flat out there are, according to only 35 studies on my website, and stacking it up to just remove anything that makes you weak first, and then add in the things that make you strong, and what you end up with is a zero insulin moving breakfast that directly raises ketones because brain octane is exogenous ketones. Mm-hmm. When you do that, you're like, holy crap, that feels different, and that got people over this, oh my God, what if butter is bad for me? 5 years ago, putting butter in a blender was a revolutionary act. Mm-hmm. It was like giving the finger to like, your doctor. Yeah. Like it was really like, can I really do this? Yeah. But now, people understand, okay, fat is fuel. Mm-hmm. So I'm grateful that I could participate in that. I was doing intermittent fasting back then, and there's some people who are like, okay, I run a podcast and I just do whatever I want. I don't have a job. I don't have kids. Here's the deal. If you want to do an intermittent fast and you're the average person who's not, a health warrior, supreme, whatever, you're going to have a hard time with an intermittent fast because you have a meeting at 11 and you're sort of crashing. And you can do it with willpower, but you don't want to take your willpower for that because you got to use it to talk to your boss. Right. So what I found was if I could boost my ketones without affecting protein metabolism and without affecting insulin at all, that the amount of effort it took to do intermittent fasting went just through the floor. Yeah. And that was why I came out with this bulletproof intermittent fasting idea. And frankly, that was borrowed from Robert Atkins, the first ketogenic guy, at least first in recent history. He had something called a fat flush, but he would use like pork rinds and cream cheese and stuff that's inflammatory. Mm-hmm. The bulletproof diet is like, look, remove the inflammatory stuff first and then do ketosis, not the other way around. So I stacked all that up, bam, there's bulletproof coffee. Mold-free coffee beans, stuff that we make. Brain octane oil, which is not MCT oil, is far more concentrated, raises ketones 4 times more than some of the MCTs, and certainly 4 times more than coconut oil. And then grass-fed butter, because normal butter doesn't work.
Yeah, I definitely want to dive deeply later on about the MCT oil and the differences in purity. I think that's really important. But it was so funny. I mean, even in the state of Wisconsin, there was this post going around where you can't buy Kerrygold butter there, right? So it's like the farmers are being impacted by it. Like, it's crazy, right? Like, I should say, like, big agriculture, right? So this movement has spread everywhere. And where I saw you 2 weeks ago, right? We caught up quickly at Natural Product Expo. So I'm sure you toured around and walked. There are so many like knockoff bulletproof coffee companies there, like trying to do the fatty coffee, trying to do the MCT, and their different spin on it. So I'm like, that's when it hit home for me that like this is really a big deal. And so it's awesome that you really started this.
It's a compliment. And we did 48 million cups of bulletproof coffee last year. We're national in Whole Foods. So really anyone can mix coconut oil in anything. It's been happening for a long time. We are the only company with brain octane. No one can get our raw ingredients. We have exclusivity on them, and they work better, and they're better for the environment. And our coffee, there's trade secrets in that stuff. We actually had to go to Guatemala and Colombia and put in new infrastructure to prevent the formation of mold. And then we do a test for 27 different toxins for that. So yeah, you can take coffee and put whatever you want in there. It's not going to work the same.
Right. And I definitely, there's a story about exogenous ketones that we'll talk about at the end that I think will reinforce what you just said there. So folks, tune all the way into the end because we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I think it's really important. But going back to like the book and building a strong like neurological resilience, right? The ability to adapt, to attend meetings like you're saying, run a family, run a business. Dave, you're doing a lot of that. I think the bulletproof coffee is a nice bridge there to get people into that more fat burning machinery. So let's kind of make the transition then to like the PGC1 alpha, AMPK, all these different intracellular signaling molecules that are induced when you do periodic fasting and you're in ketosis, how that translates into more neurologic resilience.
Well, the number one thing that creates neurological resilience isn't any of those signaling molecules, it's just electrons. Your mitochondria throughout the body, they take food and to some extent light, and actually they can take direct electrical current too, and they convert them into electricity that we then use to not die. Right? It's kind of useful. If we have enough to not die, we use that for advanced functions like thinking. And the body will really intelligently move energy around and allocate energy like for that. So your heart is going to keep beating even if you're a complete zombie because you have to breathe and things like that. Well, what if in your brain you can have more electrons? And the role of ketones there is to provide extra fuel to the brain. When your neurons have a choice between glucose and ketones, they will choose ketones even in the presence of glucose. And the other cells in your brain, the glial cells, will actually choose glucose. And this is one reason that unending ketosis is probably not a good thing, because the glial cells are the immune cells in your brain, and you don't want to torture them. You want to feed both. So if you're only in ketosis all the time, which I did during the Bulletproof Diet research with my first book, which now about 500,000 copies in 10 languages, amazing. And like #1 bestselling in Japan of all places, which is cool.
Awesome.
I'm like blown away. The ketosis is taking off in Japan.
Yeah.
And so all of this comes down to being in one state all the time isn't so good. You want to be able to go back and forth. But having a background level of ketones, which is what I do every day, really affects the neurons. The neurons have 15,000 mitochondria per cell. Normal cells have a couple hundred to a couple thousand. So they're the ones that are like the most energy hogged. And in the research for Headstrong, I actually describe how they're such complex cells, they're really long compared to normal cells. So they have little systems for shuttling mitochondria around that are only in neurons. It's like if you go to a concert and you see those like generator trailers outside to make extra power, your neurons do that when they need to really bring it. You give them ketones and you can bring it in a new way. So that's the first thing that gives you more power. It's literally untapped energy in your head. The second thing that happens when you go into ketosis, or you just have ketones present, it doesn't have to be nutritional ketosis. You can still eat ice cream, frankly, if you want to, as long as you put brain octane on it, you're going to get exogenous ketones. You can use the non-bioidentical salts or something like that too. We can talk about that later, but I think there were some concerns about that.
Yeah.
When you do this though, and you have some ketones present, one of the things that ketones do is they're called an HDA C
inhibitor. HDAC, right?
Exactly. So what happens is if you want to be able to manufacture protein in your cells, you need to be able to read the DNA. And when you have ketones present, it's easier for your body to read DNA, so then you can more easily go through and make the proteins. And the proteins are neurotransmitters, right? Repair proteins, bone synthesis, everything that your body needs to do. All of a sudden, the repair systems required less energy because of the presence of ketones, and you had more energy present at the same time. So let's do less of what makes you weak, more of what makes you strong. Those are like foundational elements, and then you get the signaling molecules and the reduction in inflammation that come from ketones, which is what you just originally mentioned.
Yeah, powerful stuff. I think that's what a lot of people don't understand about the ketogenic diet. They think that it's just about carbohydrate restriction and it's just another fad diet, right? But what you just said right there, this powerful epigenetic effect that's induced through the ketones is like, this is novel, this is like revolutionary. This is really, it's like, we're talking about this environmental gene-nutrient interaction. I mean, that's key right there. Like that the nutrients that we eat, like MCT oil and so forth, can change the way our genes are read in such a powerful way, which is really key.
It's totally true. One of the problems with high-fat, low-carb, ketogenic diets in general is that they include things like NutraSweet, which is a mitochondrial toxin. They're not organic, which means you get lots of glyphosate, which is a mitochondrial toxin. So these artificial sweeteners, which mess up your gut and poison you. They include things like highly damaged fats. So, sure, corn oil, it's not a carb, I'll eat that. And pork rinds and crap like that. Yeah. The whole point of the Bulletproof diet and of Headstrong is the type of fat really matters. And it's not like, it's saturated, it's not saturated. Look, saturated fat that's been burned is different than unburned saturated fat. And there's something like 10 different lengths of saturated fat, and they all do different things. Yeah. So to say, it's a high fat or low fat diet is meaningless. It's like a high liquid or a low liquid diet. What the hell does that mean? Well, if the liquid is, cyanide, it's probably a bad move. Right? So even a high fat, low carb doesn't mean anything until you know what the fat is and what the carb is. The Bulletproof diet and Headstrong are very much about choosing the right fats that have specific biological effects, and then not choosing the wrong fats that cause inflammation. You try and feed the mitochondria and you expand with inflammation at the same time. Inflammation means your mitochondria aren't working right. So wait a minute, is it possible to do something that's good and something that's bad at the same time? Half of people on ketogenic diets are driving with the brakes and the accelerator on at the same time because they're doing the things that make them weak and the things that make them strong. The whole point of Headstrong, the whole point of the Bulletproof diet is like put down the stuff, like take your foot off the brake first and then press the accelerator. I think that's just missing from most of the ketogenic world today. It
really is. And so basically, if I heard that right, what we're saying is like some of the people will just look at the macros when they eat. Yeah. And so they'll do, like a Diet Pepsi. They'll think that's okay. And actually, Dave, it's funny that you bring that up because I've been attending a lot of the low carb conferences recently. And I love the people there. This is not a knock on them. But people are walking around with Diet Coke and Diet Pepsi, and some of the food companies out there, and I don't want to mention any names that are like ketogenic friendly foods, have the synthetic aspartame and splenda.
Or milk protein isolate, one of the lowest quality, most inflammatory proteins you can get that sucks your ability to use polyphenols from your diet.
I didn't know that.
Casein does it as well. Yeah. So what's going on with this is the same thing that happened to me. So for listeners who don't know my background story, I lost 100 pounds. And I've kept it off for a long time. And I had all sorts of weird stuff going on biologically, lots of brain fog. And I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars hacking myself before, really, frankly, most people could spell ketosis because this was out of the anti-aging world and out of like fertility research. And some of it, I lost 50 of my 100 pounds on the Atkins diet in 1997. The other 50 took 10 years. And if you go to some of these high-fat, low-carb conferences, you'll meet people, many of whom are my friends, who used to weigh 400 pounds, and now they weigh 300 pounds and they've plateaued. Right? The plateau is because of mitochondrial toxins. It's because they're eating the wrong kinds of fat. So just cutting sugar isn't enough. You have to get it right. It's more complex than that.
Yeah, I love that you bring that out in the book and talk about environmental toxins and synthetic chemicals, and that's a huge missing link that's not, for some reason, not talked about.
It's coming around, and the sad thing is, if you're a company out there trying to sell the liar's MCT, the stuff that actually doesn't work, even though it's legal to call it an MCT, well, people are going to do that and say, it doesn't work, or maybe it's like selling Diet Coke. maybe if I do more of it, I'll try even harder and then it'll work. Well, actually, it just doesn't work. It never did. Right. So when you sell someone something that makes them think they're getting a result and they don't, they'll buy more of it, right? Which is a great business model, but it's not one that I adhere to.
Yeah, and it's not sustainable, really. I mean, people have figured it out.
Well, I know Diet Coke seems pretty sustainable.
Surprisingly, shipping around sugar and water is absolutely incredible. Yeah, but just to qualify, so you said you've lost 100 pounds, but you're a pretty big guy. So so when I first, it's hard to tell through the video and stuff like that, because a lot of people have followed you. You're like 6'4"?
I'm 6'4".
Yeah, so when you say you used to weigh 300 pounds.
I weighed, to be honest, I'm rounding up. I hit 297 in my 4th year of university, and so that was naked, so that's close enough to 300 for me.
You're like 215 now-ish? Or?
What, 250 you're saying?
15.
No, look at that. I'm 250 right now.
Okay, 250. I was going to say, you're naturally a bigger guy, right? So I think you should qualify.
I lost 100 pounds of fat, flat out. And I got myself down to 190 actually. Okay. Right. And I've put on a lot of muscle. I actually put on about 30 pounds of muscle in the past 6 weeks. Nice. That was sort of accidental. I just wanted the mitochondria and the muscle. Like I had to buy new shirts. It was irritating. Yeah. Like I'm married and I want to live to 180. You don't want to look like a bodybuilder if you want to live to 180. Yeah. So I'm actually tipping. I'm a little too heavy right now, but it's not fat. Like I'm doing pretty well. You know, I still have stretch marks, and if I eat or if I fly a lot, I get little love handles. It's not fat. It's inflammation, and that's normal. I've definitely lost 100 pounds of fat. And people are like, no, you didn't. I'm like, dude, here's my picture from Entrepreneur Magazine. 1 million people saw it, right? This is the first product ever sold on the internet was a t-shirt. By the way, I'm wearing a double XL t-shirt in the photo. And people are like, you didn't weigh 300 pounds. I'm like, what other evidence do you want, right? Right. This was, let's see, that was about 21 years ago. Yeah, maybe actually 22 years ago. Yeah, and I just say that because it's hard for people to gauge through the internet how tall you really are. So when you say you weighed 300 pounds, it's not like you had some, obviously, like you said, a little bit of fat there. But no, I was 100 pounds of fat.
Yeah,
I wasn't.
So you put on a lot of muscle since.
Yeah. Just the muscle, though, is in the last year or two. Just the research on Headstrong, you change your polyphenol intake. And frankly, I've been using some selective androgen receptor modulators, which I took for their increases in mitochondrial density. And I was like, damn, I'm putting on muscle without a change in protein, without a change in exercise, which is kind of cool.
So we have yet to talk about that too much on the show. So SARMs, right? There are a lot of good research in the cancer world, but you've been dabbling there. Sure. Do you want to share the protocol or just generally kind of talk about what you do?
Sure. If you want to, we can cut over to that. Yeah. I would direct people to just Google Bulletproof SARMs, SARMS, and I wrote down what I did. I actually haven't published my full results on there yet, just because I was at the Tony Robbins conference on stage yesterday. I'm flying all over the place. Yeah. But what I did is I took the stack of SARMs that are listed on the webpage, and the one that I was most interested in was GW501516, because in studies it increases mitochondrial biogenesis by like 50%. So people have a lot more mitochondria. I said, all right, I'll do this. And I stacked it with 4033 and 5066, if memory serves. Sure. And that's why it's all written down. I have to remember all the numbers. Right. And what I did is I just took these every night before bed. Yeah. And just
They're just capsules?
It's drops.
Okay, drops.
Right? These are all research-grade chemicals. Yeah. Some of them are banned by Olympic bodies. And I'll just tell you right now, if an Olympic body bans it, you should take it. I'm sorry. It's
caffeine and other things, right?
It's disgusting that we torture athletes, especially athletes over 35, by making them harm themselves and preventing them from recovering and managing their own biology. Like, it's disgusting. Crazy. So I'll just have to say that. And if you talk to like Mark Sisson, who's been on Build With Radio a few times, like he's like, why don't we allow older athletes to take testosterone so that they can stay strong and healthy? Right. I went on testosterone when I was 26 because my levels were lower than my mom's because I was obese, right? And because I had just a huge amount of over-aromatase going on. And I've been on and off testosterone ever since, just at bioidentical levels, not crazy levels at all, and always under doctor's care as part of just maintaining a healthy biology. Right. And I went off for about 2.5 years during the research for the Bulletproof diet just to see what worked. And I could, with very careful work, keep my levels about where I wanted them. But given that I travel 125 days a year, I'm happy to be on testosterone, so I take that as well. I inject once or twice a week, and I keep my levels around 700.
Nice.
So,
yeah, which is physiologic. You're not overdoing it like a bodybuilder.
Not at all.
So you're doing HRT, testosterone, while also doing the SARMs.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
And it's interesting too, part of the effect could be because some of the SARMs have a mild suppression of testosterone. There's no mild suppression when you're injecting testosterone, so maybe that's part of it. But here's the interesting thing from SARMs. No one really is going to biopsy your brain for mitochondria, because that's kind of a bad thing if it's called an ice pick lobotomy.
Yeah.
And what I know from the research in Headstrong is that mitochondria talk to each other a lot. There's actually quorum sensing that happens, and one of the reasons that darkness is so important. In fact, there's a new kind of glasses I read about in here. I was going to bring a pair to show you, but I left them at my hotel.
Yeah.
And what's going on there is they're talking all the time. So if you increase muscle mitochondria, the odds are that you're increasing brain mitochondria, but no one has tested the SARMs for that. So I'm like, all right, I want them in my head, but I'll take the body ones. I had to cut my thyroid medication by 70% over the course of 6 weeks.
Wow.
Now, for people who are listening, I don't know how many medical people you have at Bulletproof Radio gets a ton of
Quite a
doctors.
few, yeah.
You have quite a few, okay. It's unheard of to cut your thyroid meds by 70% in 6 weeks, because you should be like freezing all the time, sleeping all the time, getting sick. I did it because I was getting actually like missed heartbeats and extra heartbeats, and I was like sweating all the time, and I was having a hard time sleeping because the thyroid meds I've been on for 20 years, I've been slowly declining over time. When the mitochondria woke up from the SARMs, I literally couldn't handle that much thyroid. So it's just been a crazy effect. Mitochondria make infrared, they make heat. That's part of what they do. So like my body just woke up from doing this. It was really cool. And the entire time I had background levels of ketones. I was taking brain octane every single morning. I drink bulletproof coffee on an empty stomach, bulletproof intermittent fasting. My levels always hit 0.7, 0.8. And if you're above 0.5, you're getting all the changes that you're looking for, even though it's not considered nutritional ketosis.
Right. Very interesting. So the only variable that you changed was the SARMs. And so then you noticed...
Actually, I did 2 yoga classes.
Okay.
and I worked out once a week with
yeah.
either electricity or with the ARX machine. But just once a week. Like I was traveling, I was flying, I was all over the place. I have a pretty intense life.
Right. I can tell. Yeah, scheduling this podcast, I can tell.
Sorry.
Which is, no, it's good that you keep it up. I want to get into that a little bit, but that's amazing. So it's not just anabolism that we're going after with the SARMs. There's this mitochondrial biogenesis that's garnered from that. So pretty cool stuff. That's new to a lot of people.
Yeah, I put on about, I would say 30, let's see, I'm trying to figure out, I put on about 30, I want to make sure that I get my numbers right. I lost, it's hard to know how much fat, I don't do fat fold stuff, it's not that accurate anyway. So I do have my impedance thing from the Human Longevity Inc., and I have the full DEXA scan. The DEXA had me at like 15% body fat or something, which is between 15 and 20 if you want to live to 180 like me. That's a good number. 8% is not a good number.
Long term, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not. It looks good on film or something, but what I found though is that I definitely lost some fat mass. I just don't know how much. So I'm guesstimating it's 30 pounds of muscle, right?
Nice.
Because if you gain 30 pounds and you lost fat, you probably gain more than 30 pounds of muscle, right?
Either way, it's a huge swing. Even if it was just 10 pounds, that'd be a big...
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And people are like, there's just people on Twitter like, that's not possible. Yeah. Like, my favorite people on earth are the ones, that didn't happen because it can't. Like, wow, what kind of world do you live in, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, like, look at me. This is an XL. I haven't worn an XL shirt in like, God knows how long.
That's amazing. Cool. All right, good to know. Okay, so I'm going to do more research on that. Do you want to name the brand that you use, or should people just check out the blog?
You know, I put a link to the brand I use, and it overwhelmed their website, and they quit selling them. So, and I don't have any deal with any of these companies. That was just like, hey, this is a good brand. So I'm not going to plug them just because you probably can't get them there. In the blog post, just Bulletproof SARMs, I do link to people who are selling them now. I haven't like lab tested those, and it's the most reliable supplier that I can find right now. Because they're research grade chemicals and because it's a gray zone, they may change tomorrow.
Sure. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I wonder when they will be regulated, or if they will be regulated.
Let's hope they don't get regulated. The more you regulate stuff, the less you can get good stuff. So.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's talk about more things in the book. And I gathered from the book that meditation was like a keystone lifestyle habit or thing that you shifted that had a like ripple effect on your life.
Yeah.
Would you say?
If you have excess cortisol, you're not going to have good mitochondrial function, and you're going to have weight gain. You're going to have a hard time putting on muscle.
Right.
So I used to be in fight or flight mode all the time for a whole bunch of different reasons. Some of them were psychological, and a lot of them were physiological. Like there's an episode of Bulletproof Radio where I interview a guy named Dwight Jennings. It turns out the alignment of your jaw is a huge trigger for your sympathetic nervous system. My jaw used to be back and up. So for me to chew was like a huge amount of pressure on my trigeminal nerve, which affects the vagus nerve. So I, for 2 years, wore a special splint that allowed my jaw to relax and move forward and actually reshape itself without surgery. And I actually have a chin I didn't used to have because of that. So being able to go through and do things like that was important. But then switching to meditation, I've learned it from the masters in Tibet. That's why I was there on Mount Kailash, like where I discovered the bulletproof coffee idea. And I've done this 40 years of Zen program. I put together an institute after 20 years of doing neurofeedback, where meditating is cool. Meditating with rubber bumpers and lights so that you never waste a minute of meditation doing it wrong. And in the case of 40 years of Zen, it's tied in with a personal development process. That matters, but here's why it matters. And this is something that is in Headstrong, and it's so fundamental to who we are. If you look at what a bacteria has to do to stay alive, basically it needs to run away, kill, or hide from scary things. Like, okay? It needs to eat everything, and it needs to have sex with everything else. Okay? You do those three things, woohoo! Right? The species will survive. Now, what have you ever done you're ashamed of that isn't one of those three behaviors?
Well, I mean, yeah, the sex would be including, or kill things, obviously. You can't really do that, right?
Well, or you run away or hide from them, or yell at them, right? You know,
Right.
like threaten them, whatever.
Yeah.
Right, so, right, like basically every time you yell at someone you didn't mean to, like, oh, damn it.
Yeah.
What's going on here is there are quadrillion mitochondria in your body, way more than there are cells in your body, and way more than there are bacteria in your gut. They are bacteria. They're ancient red bacteria from 2 billion years ago that in high school biology we used them as our power plants. No. 2 billion years ago, they're like, look, a petri dish. They moved right in, and they're the puppet masters right now. They cause us to feel those things. They cause us to want to eat the donuts all day long. They cause us to want to have that relationship that we really ought not to have, and they cause us to get in a fight with someone we care about or to say unkind things. So those like really strong emotions that we spend a lot of our mental energy suppressing and managing, they come from our mitochondria. They are the smallest unit that creates those things. They're an emergent phenomenon. My degree is in artificial intelligence, a subset of it called decision support systems. And I studied this. This was my career for a long time in Silicon Valley. So you can make crazy stuff happen when you take small rules and you do them kabillions of times. Technical term, kabillions, right? Yeah. And so this is actually what's going on in our consciousness. And when they're stressed about food, you will never experience peace. And when you can turn on ketones, just 0.5 on a blood stick, that is not nutritional ketosis. That's 1 cup of bulletproof coffee level. Well, what happens? One of those 3 drives goes down, and you're like, oh, now I can pay attention. And if you meditate, I need to protect myself. I either need to hide, which will be procrastination, or avoidance of challenge, or I need to kill the threat, or I need to run away from the threat. That's all sympathetic activation. Well, if you can meditate a little bit, those are just go down as well. So all of a sudden now, 2 of the 3 things that you're dealing with on a daily basis, the things that suck so much of your cognitive conscious process, it's all mitochondrial, and you can address them by changing what you put in your body. And then you add that meditation in, and all of a sudden everything gets easier. And that's why this thing is called Headstrong. It's everything is easier, and it doesn't matter what it is. You can just go out and do your job, your relationships. You can go to the gym, and you can sit on the couch and just like watch TV. It's just free energy, and it's being wasted because your mitochondria are being mismanaged. And that's why meditation is so important. And that's why I do the neurofeedback stuff, because it calms it down. In the book, there's a meditation by one of 12 living grandmasters of a Chinese medicine tradition. In fact, I was on that's what I was talking to when I pulled up to do the podcast. Yeah. His name is Dr. Barry Morguelan, and he runs a website called Energy for Success. And I don't have any financial deal with him. He was just kind enough to do this because he's actually done like a lot of energetic meditation work with me He also does work with Tony Robbins and presidents of countries, and like he's actually a UCLA surgeon in his day job. Wow. He does this other stuff at night. He's one of the guys who can sit on a glacier and melt a hole in it. The lineage he comes from, he's actually from Tennessee, but lineage he's trained in is one that was there to protect the emperors of China for thousands of years and to protect them both physically and energetically. And he's like, it's all mitochondrial. So he wrote a custom mitochondrial meditation to help you like get in touch with the calmness that happens not at even the cellular level. This is under the cellular level, but that's where literally our base emotions, that's where they emerge from. And that's why ketosis is so important, because when you give those cells the energy they want, they chill the heck out, and then you chill the heck out.
All right, Dave, you said something really important there. I think I just want to reinforce in my own head what you said. Basically, so because mitochondria are really bacteria, right? And there's so many of them, and they communicate via the quorum sensing that you talked about. They're at the cellular level driving our behavior, whether we're conscious of it or not, at some level.
They drive your emotions, your behavior, and they decide if a cell lives or dies. They decide if you get cancer or not. They decide how a stem cell differentiates. They decide whether a neuron fires. They decide whether you insulate your nerves with myelin or whether you don't. They decide neurogenesis in the brain. All of it. They decide, not you, and they don't really care about what you have to think. They'll care about what you have to feel. That's why meditation matters. What are they listening to? They're listening to the world around you. What food did you put in your body? What light did you put in your body? What temperature are you putting into your body, or are you exposing yourself to? When are you sleeping? How much do you exercise? When? Are you exposing yourself to toxins on a regular basis that will make you feel stress? All of those things matter. And Headstrong is about how do you manage the environment around you so that you treat these little bastards who do not have your best interests at heart. They have their best interests at heart. Yeah. How do you control the environment so that you treat them as an ecosystem, just like you treat your gut bacteria, so that they will behave themselves? Because when the battery system in your body, they're 10% of your body weight, but they have so much power. When they're happy, you're going to be happy. Yeah. So all you have to do is set things up so that they have more power, they chill out, you chill out, and then you have a lot more energy.
Love it. I was thinking about that when I was reading the title and after reading the book. I was like, I bet at first there was something mitochondrial within the title and you changed it. I was just trying to guess, because it was really like what you just said. Yeah, it's a book about mitochondria in a good way, but how to modify your environment, lifestyle, meditation, exercise, diet, toxins, and you mentioned light. I want to get into that next. How that supports your mitochondria and how that ripples throughout your brain, through your body to help you burn fat better, think better, and so forth. So, did you ever toy around with mitochondria in the title, or you thought it'd be?
I looked at mitochondria in the title, and if you look at the success of the Bulletproof Diet, like the Bulletproof Diet, as you were saying, it really helped awareness of fat as an energy source, as fat as fuel. It helped it become mainstream. Yeah. Right? So that we didn't have fat water, like which 5 years ago no one would have ever thought could exist. But fat water is a new bulletproof product that has brain octane in it. So instead of sugar in your water, who the hell wants that, right? This is brain octane in water. So that perspective came about because it's called the Bulletproof Diet. It's not called the ketogenic diet, right? You know who wants the ketogenic diet? Geeks like us. But
right. Make it real simple.
How do you get your mom to pay attention to this? And the reason that Headstrong is titled that way is because I want people who are in the mainstream to realize they can have control of their own head. They can have control of their own energy. And of course they're going to learn about ketosis in the book, and they're going to learn about some other things they can do. But that's how you change the world. That's how you create a global shortage of grass-fed butter, which Bulletproof Coffee did.
Right.
And then that creates a huge wave of demand for grass-fed, which changes agriculture, which changes soil ecology, which actually makes the world a better place.
Totally.
So it's about creating societal change, and the title of the book really matters. If I'm marketing to myself, I'm going to sell a few thousand copies to super geeks who are into controlling their biology, who are biohackers. Yeah. And if I can name a book properly and I can explain to people why this matters to them, not why it matters to me, I'm actually performing a much bigger act of service. Plus, it takes like thousands of hours to write this thing. I want people to read it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the name is brilliant. I wasn't insinuating that. I was just wondering, like, gosh, I wonder if you toyed around. I just had to ask
I pitched it as a mitochondrial book to my publishers, and they're like,
who?
Yeah, can we make that broader? I'm like, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So it's not even on the cover, I don't think. We finally see, this is the
pre-sale.
It has like quotes from like the coolest people on the back.
It's awesome book.
Well, the new one, the one that's coming out has like Peter Diamandis, David Perlmutter, Daniel Amen, and like some really big names from the medical field, which I'm like super honored by. But you didn't get that version, so I was gonna like see if it said mitochondria on the back. But yeah, brain energy.
Yeah.
Brain energy is interesting to people who don't care about mitochondria, and all of us who are listening to this who are like, mitochondria, that's so cool. You're gonna know what the book's about.
Totally. All right, let's talk about light, because I don't want to get into your personal routines a little bit and kind of pick your brain there. But you're a big fan of red light in the morning and before bed. Let's talk about why.
We have a deficiency of red light because we keep getting exposed to blue light. Even here in your studio, there's an LED light that's primarily high in the blue spectrum. In my studio, I got rid of those. We actually use tungsten halogen lights. They get a little hotter during summer, but they make this warm light, and I'm not tired at the end of the day. If you sit under this light all day, do you get tired?
A little bit, yeah. It's straining on the eyes, for sure.
And the eyes are full of mitochondria. Those mitochondria get stressed. They tell the brain mitochondria get stressed, and they tell you get stressed, which then turns up your desire to have sugar to deal with stress because you might need to run away from these bad lights. Now you've got a sugar craving, right? This is actually happening right now. This is happening to people in their workplace. Oh yeah, they put in those new high intensity LED lights and now I have sugar cravings in the afternoon. So red light is something that balances out blue light. We evolved as these ancient bacteria. Let's see, sunrise, red light, full spectrum light during the day. There's some blue in there, but it's accompanied by red, infrared, and ultraviolet. That's normal. And then sunset, red, and then, this is really important, pitch black. You might have some stars, there's moon occasionally, but the darkness is actually as important, or maybe more important than the red light. Here's why. Mitochondria make biophotons. And are you familiar with this?
A little bit, but yeah, let's dive into it.
So LED lights make photons. Mitochondria are semiconductors, and they make the same kind of biophotons. They make them single photons at a time, so they're incredibly light receptive. The ones on your skin are, the ones in your eyes, the ones in your brain, all of them. And what's happening here is that they're communicating with each other. We weren't sure that they were doing this, but since they transmit light and they receive light, like, okay, is it theoretically possible? So then I put on my network engineering hat from Silicon Valley, and we can define mathematically the signal to noise ratio required for a signal to get through. And what they've proven using something called Shannon's Law, and for the geek people who are my old Silicon Valley friends, you know what I'm talking about. This is a way to determine that you can get a signal through. They found that if it's pitch black or nearly pitch black, mitochondria can talk to each other. If it is light, if there's blue light, if there's green light, there's many different lights. Even the light that goes through the blue blocker glasses, mitochondria can't talk to each other. So one of the things that I'm doing with light exposure is I get the red lights. I have a red LED running all day long to balance out all the blue I get, and I get sunlight whenever I can. Keep in mind I live in Canada, sometimes there isn't any. And then at night, I wear these glasses called True Dark glasses. These have a patented set of optical filters that blocks every spectrum of light that affects what's called the melanopsin sensors in your eyes, and these have extra mitochondria in them. 2 weeks ago, I was in San Diego at the Salk Institute, meeting with the PhD team who actually is looking at melanopsin sensors and actually got to like peel back layers on the electron microscope view. And you can literally, they figured out how to stain these. You can literally see that about 5% of the cells in your retina are studded with these like big bulky mitochondria. They get light and they don't send it into your brain at all, into the visual part of your brain. They send it into the circadian rhythm part of your brain. So by having this red light in the morning and very specifically blocking all the spectrums of light that affect you, not just the blue light, and doing that in the evening, you totally change your sleep, which changes your mitochondria. So making your bedroom black is probably more important than having a red light on in the morning. I have red lights installed in my showers, right? Like I have them in the overhead lights in my office. So you want to do this, and you also want infrared light, which is really important. These are part of sunlight, and in an incandescent light, they're part of an incandescent light. They're not part of a fluorescent light, and they're certainly not part of an LED light. So if you have interior white or blue or any of those like natural spectrum LED lights, what you actually have is the corn syrup of lighting. It's junk light, and you shouldn't be exposing yourself to it because you will get macular degeneration. You have a higher increased risk of skin cancer, and you're causing yourself to have more blood sugar dysregulation. Like, these are a public menace, especially in schools or places where you want people to pay attention. You want to make more money as an entrepreneur and you have software programmers, get them good lighting. They'll write better code. It's like that straightforward.
That's really powerful. So the commercially available, the red lights we can do and implement into a work facility and also a home, yeah?
Yeah, they're dirt cheap. I mean, we're talking, get the tape light off Amazon, tape red LED light. That's what I have. I put them on a light switch, and they're pretty much always on.
That's awesome.
At night, it's just red lights. It looks like I work in either like a brothel or a submarine. When I was writing Headstrong, okay, I'm the CEO of a rapidly growing venture-backed company. We're doing well. I also write the blog. I record 2 episodes of Bulletproof Radio, and it's like a Webby award-winning 50 million downloads. And I'm saying all that not because I'm bragging. I'm saying I'm a busy guy. I'm also a father of 2 young kids and a husband. I drive my kids to school every morning when I'm home. So like every minute is packed. So when am I going to write a book like this? And you've read this. This is a pretty information-dense book.
A lot of references,
Yeah, and a lot of new synthesis of things that haven't been done before. So I wrote almost all this book between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m.
Wow.
And when I did that, I was wearing true dark glasses and I only have red lights on. So my circadian biology remained intact. I could still get my sleep, and I didn't break my biology doing it, which is kind of cool. It's possible to do that.
So you would like sleep from like 5 to 8 or something like that, and then get out
5
to
to 8,
family
sometimes
routine.
5 to 9. Yeah, it depends. There are some mornings where it's like, sorry, I'm not driving you to school in the middle of writing the book, but the vast majority of the time I did that. And I showed you my sleep cycle data. Sometimes I'd go to bed at 3, 4, 5, depending. And what I was doing to get the energy was, I'm not having coffee to stay up. By the way, with the Bulletproof Diet, there were times when I would like, okay, I'm just going to write masses of this thing in like 10 days, and I would like pull an all-nighter, sleep for 2 hours, and just really burn the candle at both ends and just go into this like altered state and write.
Sure.
For this one, I was a little bit gentler on my biology. So instead of using Bulletproof coffee, which the caffeine is a bit of a problem then, I would use Bulletproof decaf, which means I'm getting the polyphenols from the coffee. And in Headstrong, I write about why you have to blend Bulletproof coffee. It doesn't work if you eat a stick of butter and drink some coffee. This is another thing high-fat, low-carb doesn't get. Like the state of the droplet size really matters. So the polyphenols that are in decaf coffee, when you combine that with some of the mitochondrial enhancers, the supplements I manufacture, things like Keto Prime, which is another type of ketone that's almost unheard of, and things like Unfair Advantage that increases mitochondrial efficiency. You take those things, you get polyphenols, and you get the ketones from brain octane. You're like, oh, okay, I can do this without stimulants. Like it's all just your own energy rather than an artificial input, even like caffeine or something. So that's what powered the writing of the book.
That's awesome. Really good thing to know. But so you travel 120 days a year, you said?
125 usually.
So I travel quite a bit too. Not quite that much, about 70-ish. But the hard part about traveling is like managing your hotel sleeping space. So I like the ultra dark room. You talked all about that, how the photons and the mitochondria, it's important. I have like pins and tacks that I use sometimes in the hotel rooms. What do you do? Because this is a real life concern. And my mom, when we did an Airbnb, my mom was with me and she was like, what are you doing? Because my daughter and I sleep together and my mom was in the other room and I was taping stuff to block it out. She was like, this is crazy, Mike. I'm like, no, this is real. But so what do you do, Dave?
We're probably not that far apart. And I actually put up some videos of this. I have these things called true dark dots that you can put over an LED that filter out all the sleep interfering parts of this.
Sure.
It's basically the same as the glasses.
Yeah.
And I'll travel with those, and I'll travel with a roll of electrical tape. Yeah. And like I was in Abu Dhabi. Okay, that's one of the longest flights you can take, like to fly from Vancouver to Abu Dhabi. I forget how many hours it was, but it was a lot in UAE. And I'm staying at one of the nicest hotels in one of the most expensive cities in the world, thanks to the generosity of a friend. And right above the bed, every 5 seconds, there's a bright green LED. It goes blink, blink,
oh my
blink.
gosh.
It is not possible for a human being to sleep in that environment and get deep sleep. It is biologically impossible. And clearly, no one designed that to happen. It was just, well, we needed a fire alarm. And so, I put a chair up on the bed. Good thing I'm tall. Stand up there and put stickers on it. I carry a little roll of electrical tape, probably same as you. And I also go to the door in the hotel rooms where I was staying for the Tony Robbins conference this weekend. I put a towel under the door. I hang another towel along the side of the door because there was so much light leaking in that it was affecting sleep. And here's the neat trick on the curtains. I don't want to carry a lot of weight. I never check bags. Like, it goes against my religion. Because like if you travel 125 days of the year and you waste an extra half hour on each trip, that's like 2 weeks of productivity lost waiting for your bag, not to mention when they lose it. So I get the coat hangers out of the closet that have the clips for your pants. those will pinch curtains together like nothing else.
That's a good idea.
You take those in the middle, and then the ends, you need a couple pins.
Yeah.
Right.
Really good idea. Yeah, but you're right. The miscellaneous electronics. There's like the alarm clock and then all the lights.
I just unplug all that crap.
Yeah, it's a pain.
I also bring red bulbs.
Nice.
I'm super, I guess, nerdy that way. But I have these 2 little red LED bulbs. And by the way, the Radisson at the USC campus just got 2 of them because I forgot to pack them when I left. But I have to buy some more.
Yeah.
But they're $6 bulbs from Amazon, and they're small. Mm-hmm. And you just unscrew the crappy lights. And if you do that at night, you can still see. But now it's restful, and you will sleep better, and that's why I can sleep less. And you saw my sleep quality numbers on
really
this thing.
Good.
Like I sleep damned efficiently. I don't want to spend a half hour going to sleep. I spend 3 minutes going to sleep.
Mm-hmm. That's smart. All right, good. I had to ask that. All right, so we just have about 10 more minutes left. I know you got to run pretty soon, and you've met a lot of wonderful people, and you've interviewed a lot of great people. You're on stage with Tony Robbins this past weekend. Who inspires you? Like, who do you look up to, right? I mean, if you're kind of getting at the top here, Dave, like in terms of like high performers, right? So is there a role model in your life?
It's hard to say there's just one.
Mm-hmm.
For almost 20 years, I've run the Silicon Valley Health Institute, this group that's brought in top anti-aging researchers. So I've had a chance to meet just so many people who you may have heard of, may not have heard of, who are just really inspiring. And a chance to sit down with guys like David Perlmutter, who's the Grain Brain guy, mm-hmm. and also just wrote a new book whose name is escaping right now, but it's a really good one. Awaken the Brain, I think.
Brain Maker.
Brain Maker, yeah. And he's, I believe, double board certified in nutrition and medicine. And you sit down with these guys, and most of them are 10, even some of them 20 years older than me. Mm-hmm. Right? I'm only 44. And some of them have been giving back for a lot longer than I have been. And you just look at the depth of their knowledge and the clarity of their knowledge and just the incredible just the intent to serve. And all of them have broken paradigms. And they're like, look, I'm incredibly well certified. All of them have like arrows in their backs from trolls, and none of them give a crap, mm-hmm. right? They just do it. Guys like David Ludwig, mm-hmm. triple board certified, Boston Children's, Harvard Nutrition, and Harvard Medicine, like holds 3 different seats, or 3 different, whatever they call them in medicine. I don't know, I'm not a doctor. But the same thing, he wrote Always Hungry. So to get to hang out with guys like this, mm-hmm. and to then just have these deep conversations about collagen and ketones, and to not have to sort of, to translate what I'm thinking about, and then realize, well, these guys can go deeper, and they're reaching even bigger numbers of people, and they're doing it with their medical license at risk sometimes. Like, that really inspires me. Guys like Joseph Pizzorno, who's a founder of Bastyr College, who was just on Bulletproof Radio. He's 70-something years old, has been teaching people for 30 years about functional medicine and how the system of the body works. So like, I've been studying this for 20 years, and I've only really been sharing it for 5, and I have a very respectable amount of knowledge, I like to think. But when I look at just the lifetime of service from some of these guys, I'm blown away. And then I switch gears and I look at guys like Tony Robbins. I've never seen anyone manage the emotional state of 9,000 people at one time so effectively. I'm sitting in this VIP section because I'm a speaker with like, there's like billionaires. Kim Kardashian takes a picture of the back of my head with Tony Robbins. Like, holy crap, right? Like, how does this even happen, right? Yeah. And so I'm inspired by the ability to move mountains and just the sheer force of will from someone like a Tony Robbins. And then from there, it goes down to like there's thousands of researchers who are like these maverick scientists who have spent their whole life studying something for 20 years, and they know stuff. Guys like Gerald Pollack, who probably no one's heard of. He spoke at the Bulletproof Conference, and his work is in Headstrong. He's the guy who figured out, there's this other thing about water that no one noticed, because it took me 5 years of working as a bioengineer to figure this out. And like, there's just so much incredible knowledge there. Yeah. And Gary Taubes being that same thing as well, really, really digging on it. So that just like the list could just go on, because these are people who just focus, learn, and then they have something magic, but it oftentimes doesn't get shared, and it's that focus and learning that inspires me. Yeah, and one thing that's unique to all those people is being very essential about your time and saying no to a lot of things. And so do you say no a lot? Actually, I don't have to say no a lot. It's not my job anymore.
Secretaries and assistants do that for you, right? So you can stay laser focused and on track.
It's a decision to say no.
Yeah.
So I track willpower, and willpower requires electrons, which requires mitochondrial function, which requires fuel, like the system of the human. And that's actually a part of the bulletproof diet and a part of this. So every decision you make costs you something.
Yeah.
So I have filters, but it doesn't mean I say no. It means that the system and the amazing people who support me will usually say no for me. And by the time it gets to me, the answer should almost always be yes. And even then, sometimes I'll say no.
Yeah.
But I usually set the policies and I work with the team. And so if I get an inquiry, Dave, can you please come on my podcast interview, whatever it is, I'm not going to see that right away unless we're already friends.
Yeah.
If I've been on before or something.
Yeah.
What's going to happen is my team is going to say, okay, like, is this a good fit? Like,
Right.
will the audience care? And is there time and what else is happening?
Yeah.
And they're going to say yes or no. And my calendar, I don't know if I showed you, but it is every minute of every day during the time I've agreed to work is booked up. And after that, it's booked up. This is drive the kids to school time. This is Dave's biohacking time in the morning. Most mornings, you'll find me on the phone with my EA for the first half hour. I'm standing on the Bulletproof Vibe, a whole body vibration platform that stimulates mitochondria, and it's like going for a long walk in less time. I stand on that naked in front of a tanning lamp that's high in ultraviolet B. Sorry, I just told my EA I'm naked on the phone, but in fact, you don't want to burn the junk, so you want to cover that sometimes. But you're in front of at least in my case, it's an ultraviolet B focused lamp, so less aging than ultraviolet A. But the mitochondria love that. And so there we go. I got my movement, I got my physical stimulation, which the mitochondria respond to, and now I'm ready for the day. And I might from there jump into my cryotherapy, or I might do some neurofeedback. But it's all calendared, right? Whatever it is I'm going to do. And then when it's done, okay, this is time to play with the kids. This is dinner time. This is bedtime. And this is, family time with my wife, Lana. And then she's going to go to bed because she's like sleeps like 8 hours or something ridiculous. And I only need 6 hours of sleep to have this level of energy. So then I have my evening time, and that is not scheduled. That I might work. I might do 2 hours of neurofeedback, 40 years Zen stuff. I have all that gear at home. It's nice to have my own lab, right?
Totally. So speaking of that, my next question here, so you're doing a lot of wonderful health habits, right? And your routines and your days set for you and things like that. Is there one thing that maybe you're not doing or that you're doing that may not be that healthy for you? Maybe it's a glass of red wine a week. I don't know what it is. For me, it's looking at my phone before I go to bed. I know that I shouldn't be doing it, but I do it anyway, and I need to work on that. But is there something in your life that you're like, you know what, I got to change that?
The other day I smelled a marshmallow and I felt really guilty. No, what I'm dealing with now is I actually think that one of the most important things is to have unscheduled time, because that's when I get to do my most creative putting stuff together. So I'm working with my team to tell them back the F off, right? Like I want to set aside 2 mornings a week where I don't do anything till noon, where I'm just going to do whatever serendipitously occurs to me, because that's when I sit down and I do the research for my next book. And ideas download themselves all the time, but I don't necessarily take action on them. So for me, building in quality, unstructured time is a challenge, because my team is so good at filling up the calendar with meaningful, impactful things that if I don't put a break on that, they'll fill every minute that I allow to be filled. So it's about setting even tighter boundaries and saying no even more, so that I can, I feel like reading this book. Like right now, I have a stack this tall of books sent to me by the authors who are good authors, right? Like these are people I know. Like, I want to read all these, and some of them are going to be guests, and sometimes I have to just skim it and I don't get to really absorb it. I'd like to get a little bit more time for that kind of work, which is it's of less immediate value, but long term it leads to happiness and things like that.
Right. Now, are you one to go into PubMed and just spend an hour searching for different things, or you like to how do you like come up with these different ideas?
I've spent now more than 3 months of my life with electrodes glued to my head. So the voices in my head are mostly dead. They're gone. And that leaves a lot of space for creativity and intuition. So a thought will just occur, and let me Google that. And then I always end up on PubMed, and I'm like, okay, I didn't know that pathway tied to that pathway. I bet this is involved. So without the internet, without Google and things like that, it would be very hard for me to synthesize the ideas at the rate that I do. It makes me laugh, because when Google was just one server, I was a co-founder of a part of the company that held their first server when they were first getting going.
Crazy.
It was called Exodus Communications. I was a co-founder of the professional services unit of that company. And just to think like what happened, that was almost exactly 20 years ago, between then and now, and like Google now, like
unlimited.
Yeah.
If you had to put a number, how many servers do you think they have now?
It's in the millions.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't believe they published the full number, but they might now because it just doesn't matter. And they've, by many years ago, stopped using outsourced data centers because they build their own computers, they build their own data centers. Yeah. But just to sort of think like I'm relying on that service right now in order to be able to look at hacking human biology, because it was really hard. How old are you?
34.
All right. Do you know what a microfiche is?
I don't.
I'm only 10 years older than you. Okay?
Yeah.
This is the difference.
Right.
When you went to college, you had Ethernet, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I was the last guy at UC Santa Barbara, the last class, to not have internet in the dorms. Right. So the difference in the way you think and the way that most people from my generation think is pretty different. And microfiche are the way we used to do research. They would take photos of all the magazines and all the information, and they'd shrink it down, like Xerox it down to these tiny little plastic things, and you have to go find a plastic thing and put it in a machine.
And you turn the knob. Yeah, I remember that.
What the hell?
I forgot what they were called. But
right.
Yeah.
So the latency and the ability to find something, you might find 1% of what is possible to find now. So when I'm like, okay, I really want to understand this specific polyphenol and what it does to this specific thing. Oh, there's 3 papers. They're all from China and they were translated automatically, but I can look at that. I can get the knowledge and then, that confirms this theory that I got signals from over here. And I have an unusual brain and because it's heavily hacked, but to be able to access that information, that's actually what makes me happy. And that requires time to just let yourself do the wandering. Yeah. When people say, what are you reading? I'm like, a cross-linked mass of weird stuff, and it's Tim Berners-Lee's fault, is the guy who invented hyperlinking in the World Wide Web. I'm like, I don't know what I'm reading.
That's awesome. But a key insight there is you let your intuition guide you a little bit.
In fact, I train my intuition very consciously. Part of this neurominer software that I have, and this is not a part of Bulletproof, it's like a little hack thing. Yeah. It's designed to teach you what's going on in your brain when you're not paying attention. All of your intuition happens when your mitochondria are working at full function, and your brain has 2 modes. There's default mode, and then there's active mode. And we used to believe it was binary, one or the other. It turns out it's a sliding scale. So when you're in daydream mode, there's a little bit of active mode, and when you're in full-on focus mode, there's a little bit of daydream mode. The problem is when you're dreaming, you never remember your dreams. So what if you could train yourself to always have memory when you're in passive mode where all the intuition and creativity happens? Well, that's what the neurominer software does. So I use that to train myself to always have a thread of awareness when I'm daydreaming, so then I can write it down.
Yeah, interesting. Is it good to remember your dreams and write them down? Dream recall?
It's really important, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so there's actual dreams, but there's also daydreams. You have these little micro times during the day where your mind goes somewhere, but you don't know where it went. You can train yourself to know where it goes, because wherever it's going is probably relevant for what you're working on.
Sure.
Yeah.
Very interesting. By chance, I might have a tip for you. Do you mouth tape at night?
Mouth tape.
We'll talk about that offline.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah,
Do you tape your jaw up or something?
Just tape your lips shut so that your nose breathing. It really helps with dream recall.
Whoa! I'll give you.
I got a piece of tape before we leave.
Okay, I use like a bite guard and things like that keeps the jaw from falling back. But all right,
it might help. Yeah, it's been a huge game changer in my life.
I'm so going to try this. Awesome.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so 2 final questions here. If you were to just be stranded on a desert island, vitamin D and omega-3s are covered. What herb, nutrient, botanical, or supplement is coming with you? Just one thing.
Coffee.
Coffee. Love it.
Here's something people don't know about coffee. When you take the equivalent of caffeine from 2 to 5 cups of coffee, it can double your ketones in the morning. Just caffeine can do that. Coffee is also a hugely rich source of polyphenols, and it's good. Yeah. So if I'm stuck on a stranded island, or stranded whatever, and it doesn't have any calories. So if we really were to talk about this, it would have to be like liver or eggs or something. Yeah. But if we're talking about like a superfood, botanical, something like that, it would absolutely be coffee, because you get so many polyphenols in it. There's no more polyphenol dense thing out there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love coffee too. We can talk about coffee a lot. So if you were to bump shoulders with in an elevator with a politician of sorts, maybe from Canada, maybe the US, someone that could have an influence over policy, over the masses, what aspect of nutrition or lifestyle would you want to tell them in like a 30-second elevator ride? If they said, Dave Asprey, you've talked to many people, what should I know to help the people? What would you tell them?
I would tell them that it is time right now to go after Monsanto. You need to seize all of their assets and use them to repair the damage they're doing to the soil. Like flat out, that company needs to go.
Yeah, because it's all no bueno.
Well, it's because we need diversity in our agriculture and they're controlling seeds and they're using the legal system to destroy farmers who are being contaminated by their product. Okay. They're also poisoning my kids, they're poisoning me, and they're poisoning you. One of the things that they keep saying is that their product, glyphosate, doesn't poison people, which is proven to be a lie. Did I mention that we're mostly bacteria by count? Yes, we are. Glyphosate kills bacteria. It has an effect on your mitochondria that is shown in studies. But even worse, when we make collagen, which is what our skin, our bones are made out of, collagen uses glycine. Glyphosate replaces glycine, so you can't make healthy collagen. And then when you eat animals that are exposed to it, you get that bioaccumulated toxin. Yet they say it breaks down the environment. It's not true. So number one policy thing you could do, save our soil, get rid of Monsanto.
Really good tip. I love that. Now, what comes to mind is you've talked to a lot of people. How do you detoxify glyphosate, or do we know? Do you have any?
There aren't a lot of good studies on how to detoxify that. There's some products that help with maintaining the gut lining. One of the things that happens when you eat that stuff is it punches holes in your gut lining, so you can get leaky gut from it. Yeah. And there's a product called, I think it's called Restore. It's like a liquid you can drink that comes from humic acid that has actually some studies that are pretty convincing that it might help, at least to avoid the damage right there. But it's harming your gut bacteria. Yeah. Like it's affecting your entire system. Right. I don't know that we have a good way other than don't expose yourself to it. I only eat organic food.
Right.
You
grow a lot of your own food.
In fact, when I'm at home, we grow all of our own food. Yeah. Except for the beef. They eat our grass, but they're raised by the neighbor, and the sheep are 2 miles away. Yeah. But our vegetables all come from our farm, and there aren't people spraying nearby. I'm pretty fortunate. I also live in a place where real estate's affordable. That helps. But for everyone else, going organic is more important than ever before. So if we're talking to politicians, there's nothing more pressing. If you look at where we're going to be as a species 20 years from now, it's like Monsanto is guilty of crimes against humanity. Someone has to do something about it.
Yeah, it's really incredible. Too bad. So Dave, the book comes out April 4th.
April 4th.
Do you have any bonuses or things where people want to check out?
Yeah, if you go to orderheadstrong.com, you get the first chapter for free. You get some coupons, some videos, and a bunch of other stuff like that. It's not a high pressure, I'm going to upsell you on my $99. There's none of that. So I just want you guys to read the book because there's thousands and thousands of hours of research in it, and it takes about 4 hours to read. It's way more leverage than this podcast or any of my radio shows or any of my blog posts. It's just the most dense, most readable thing that I know how to make. And so this is an offering, and it's quite affordable for what it is.
Absolutely. You did a great job. Everything's referenced, and I like the flow of it, and there's a lot of cool key takeaways. So I already have a bunch of earmarks we talked about.
It's definitely rat-eared
before. So guys, thanks so much for tuning in. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions or comments for Dave, I'll be watching the chat bar below, and we'll have links to Headstrong in the YouTube description as well. So we'll catch you on the next video.